My wife cheated on me with her new coworker. Then he tricked her into a crime that got them both fired. When I confronted her, she begged for mercy, but Hey everyone, I'm posting here because I really need some advice and perspective on what's happening in my life right now. I'm still in shock and don't know how to process everything that's going on. To give you some background, my name's Andrew. My wife, Kate, and I have been married for 7 years, and we have a beautiful 4-year-old daughter named Sophia. I thought our marriage was solid, even if things have been a little rocky lately. But looking back, maybe I was just too blind to see what was really happening. I work as a logistics manager for a local shipping company. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays well and it's stable. I spend a lot of time coordinating shipments, managing deliveries, and solving all kinds of last-minute issues. Kate, on the other hand, has a much more dynamic career. She's a marketing specialist at a big advertising firm, and she's always been proud of her work. We've managed to balance our professional and personal lives fairly well. At least I thought so. The first sign that something was off happened a few months ago. Kate started talking about a new guy at work, some hotshot named Alex who'd just joined her team. At first, it was all work-related stuff, like how ambitious and talented he was, and how he often clashed with others because he didn't like to follow company protocols. Kate would come home frustrated, venting about how Alex thought he knew everything and was trying to push the team in directions that didn't make sense. I figured it was just typical office politics, but there was something in the way she spoke about him that caught my attention. You know that feeling when you just know something isn't quite right. It wasn't so much what she said about him, but how often she brought him up at dinner, during family outings, and even on weekends when we were supposed to be relaxing. She'd mention him in passing, how he was driving everyone crazy or how he made some big mistake that she had to fix. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd brush it off, saying she was just venting. I trusted her. I really did. But it was almost as if Alex was creeping into every part of our conversations. Then the small changes began. Kate started staying late at work more often than usual. When I'd asked her about it, she'd say they were working on a big campaign, and with Alex being new, she needed to help him catch up. At first, it made sense. I know how demanding her job can be, and I'd always been supportive of her career. But it wasn't just the late nights. She started dressing differently, too. New clothes, more makeup than usual, and perfume she hadn't worn in years. Again, I didn't think much of it. I thought she was just putting more effort into her appearance because she was dealing with new people at work. But then there were the excuses, so many of them. One night, she said she had to go to a networking event that popped up out of nowhere. When I suggested she skip it to spend some time with Sophia and me, she got defensive, saying that I didn't understand how crucial it was for her career. This was followed by her phone suddenly becoming a permanent fixture in her hand. She used to leave it lying around, but now it was always with her. When I asked why she was glued to it all the time, she'd just laugh it off, saying she was too busy at work to answer emails during the day and had to catch up at night. Still, I didn't push too hard. We've always had a good relationship, or at least that's what I thought. I never believed in snooping through her stuff or questioning her trustworthiness. But the changes kept piling up, and one night it all came to a head. Kate was supposed to come home after a work meeting, but it was already close to midnight, and she still wasn't back. I called and texted her a few times, and each time she replied with a different excuse. Traffic's bad, wrapping up one last thing. Someone spilled wine on their dress, and I'm helping out. It didn't make any sense, but I didn't want to argue over the phone. I waited for her in the living room, my mind racing. Sophia had been asleep for hours, and there I was, sitting alone in the dim light, trying to figure out what was going on. I decided to open up our shared laptop to check if there were any calendar reminders or events that might explain why she was still out. I know it sounds stupid, but I didn't even think about looking for evidence of anything else. I just wanted to know where she was. That's when I noticed a few strange tabs open, hotel booking sites, some fancy restaurant menu I'd never seen before, and most suspiciously, an unsent email draft. The email was addressed to someone named Alex, with the subject line, "Missing you already, red heart." My hand started to shake as I clicked on it. It was like something out of a bad dream. The message described how she couldn't wait to see him again, how thrilling it was to have something just for us that no one else knew about. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. This couldn't be happening, right? Maybe it was just a bad joke or a misunderstanding. Maybe she was helping a friend draft a message, or it was some sort of harmless prank. I tried to convince myself of anything other than what was right in front of me. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and sat there in silence, trying to calm myself down. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't shake off the image of that email. I decided not to say anything that night, waiting until I had more proof, if there even was any. The next day, I couldn't focus on anything at work. I kept replaying the email in my head, wondering what it meant. Kate hadn't mentioned Alex for a couple of days, but when she texted me around noon saying she'd be late again because she had to help a colleague with a last-minute project, I knew I had to dig deeper. I didn't want to confront her without more information, so I decided to reach out to an old friend who had gone through a similar situation a couple of years back. Matt's ex-wife had cheated on him, and he'd hired a private investigator to find out the truth. I'd been there for him when it all went down, and he was the one who suggested I get professional help. "You can't confront her now, man," Matt warned over the phone. "If you go in with just a hunch or a single email, she'll just lie or twist things around. You need solid proof. Call this guy I used. He's discreet, and he knows what he's doing. Don't say anything to her yet." Reluctantly, I took Matt's advice and contacted the private investigator he recommended. The investigator's name was Rick. He sounded calm and professional, asking me questions that made me feel both relieved and anxious at the same time. He asked for details on Kate's schedule, her usual hangouts, and if I had any suspicions about specific dates or locations. I mentioned the email and her behavior changes, but I still didn't have much to go on. "Let's start small," Rick suggested. "I'll do some basic surveillance. If there's something there, we'll find it. You just need to stay calm and not change your behavior around her. If she senses something's off, she might back off or get more secretive. Trust me, I've seen it happen 1,000 times." I agreed and told him I'd get him all the information he needed. That night, I tried to act as normal as possible when Kate came home. She was all smiles, talking about her day and how she had to stay late because the team was under pressure. I nodded and asked how things were with the new guy, Alex, since she hadn't mentioned him lately. She seemed taken aback for a split second, but then her expression softened. "Oh, Alex? He's fine. He's actually been a lot better recently. I think he's finally starting to fit in," she replied casually. I didn't push any further and just smiled, nodding like it didn't bother me at all. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe that email really was a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. She still had her phone clutched tightly in her hand the entire evening, and when I suggested watching a movie together, she declined, saying she had to catch up on some emails. Over the next few days, Rick started his surveillance. I felt guilty, like I was the one betraying her by invading her privacy. But I kept reminding myself that I needed to know the truth. If I was wrong, then I'd apologize and work on fixing whatever had caused me to become so paranoid. But if I was right, I had no idea what I'd do then. Rick sent me updates every couple of days, but initially there wasn't much. Kate went to work, stayed late, and drove home. Nothing out of the ordinary. I was beginning to think maybe I was wrong until Rick called me on a Thursday afternoon. "Andrew, I'm sending you something you need to see," he said, his tone serious. "I've been tailing her the last couple of days. Yesterday, she left the office around 8 p.m., and instead of going home, she drove to a hotel downtown. I took some photos of her entering the building. Today, the same thing happened. She left the office late and drove to the same place. She wasn't alone, Andrew. My heart pounded as I waited for his email to come through. When it did, I hesitated before opening it. I felt sick, but I had to see it for myself. The first few photos were of Kate smiling and looking relaxed as she got out of her car. Then I saw the next set, a tall man with dark hair, meeting her outside the hotel entrance. They walked in together, side by side, and I felt a surge of anger so intense it almost made me drop my phone. "Is that him?" "Alex," Rick asked over the phone. "Yes," I replied through gritted teeth. "That's him." Rick sighed. "I'm sorry, man. I'll keep following them. Do you want me to get closer? Try to catch them together inside?" I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No, just keep a record. I don't need to see them doing anything. Just get whatever you can and let me know." That night, I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the TV while Kate was out, supposedly at another networking event. I couldn't believe it. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Everything about our marriage, everything I'd trusted and believed in, felt like a lie. But I couldn't confront her yet, not until I had more. Rick continued to follow Kate for another few days. Each time it was the same story. She'd stay late at work, then meet up with Alex at the hotel. He managed to get a few more photos of them entering and leaving together, looking far too comfortable and intimate for two colleagues. I felt sick to my stomach every time I looked at those pictures, but I forced myself to save each one. Finally, after a week of this torture, I decided I had enough. I asked Rick to stop the surveillance and thanked him for his help. I couldn't bear to see any more photos of my wife walking into that hotel, laughing and smiling as if everything was normal. It was time for a confrontation. I spent the entire day preparing myself for what I had to do that evening. My hands were trembling, and my thoughts were all over the place. But I knew I couldn't keep living in this state of uncertainty and betrayal. After putting Sophia to bed, I sat in the living room, waiting for Kate to get home. My mind kept flashing back to the photos. The way she smiled at Alex, the way she leaned toward him as they walked into the hotel together. How could she do this to me? To us? Around 10 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Kate walked in, looking just like she always did, calm and collected, like nothing was wrong. I don't know how she did it. She smiled when she saw me sitting there, like she wasn't expecting me to be awake. "Hey, you're up late," she said, putting down her bag. "Everything okay?" I nodded, gesturing to the chair opposite me. "Yeah, I just need to talk to you about something." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "Sure. Is everything all right? You look stressed." I almost laughed. Stressed? That was the understatement of the year. I took a deep breath and forced myself to speak calmly. "Kate, is there anything you want to tell me? Anything that's been on your mind lately?" She furrowed her brow and tilted her head. "What do you mean? Is something wrong?" I could see the wheels turning in her head. Was she thinking about what lie to tell me next? Was she going to pretend everything was perfectly fine like she'd been doing for weeks? I couldn't take it anymore. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, opening the photos Rick had sent me. "Why don't you explain these?" I asked quietly, handing her the phone. Her eyes widened as she looked at the screen, and I could see her mind scrambling to find an excuse. She glanced back up at me, her face pale. "Andrew, what is this? Where did you get these?" "Don't play dumb, Kate. I had someone follow you," I replied, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. "He took these pictures of you and Alex going into that hotel. Do you want to keep lying to me, or are you finally going to tell me the truth?" For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't decide what to say. Then she took a deep breath, her expression shifting from shock to defiance. "All right, yes, it's true," she snapped. "I've been meeting Alex, but it's not what you think. It was just a few times. It didn't mean anything. I got caught up in the excitement. That's all." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was still trying to downplay it, like this was some sort of misunderstanding. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay calm for Sophia's sake. "Don't lie to me, Kate. I know. It's been going on for weeks. I've got all the evidence I need. I'm not asking for excuses. I want the truth." Her face softened, and for a second, I thought she was finally going to come clean. But then, she shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "It wasn't serious, Andrew. I swear, it was just a stupid fling. I didn't even—" "Don't." I cut her off, raising a hand. "Don't say you didn't sleep with him. I'm not an idiot, Kate. I saw the way you looked at him in those pictures. Do you think I'd be confronting you if I wasn't sure?" She looked away, wiping at her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. I was feeling neglected, okay? You're always so busy with work, and I felt like I was just fading into the background. Alex made me feel wanted again. Wanted," I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. "Are you serious right now? I've done everything I can to support you, to be there for you and Sophia, and you're telling me you felt neglected? So you decided to throw everything away for him." Kate shook her head furiously, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, I didn't throw anything away. I swear I was going to end it. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to risk our marriage," I shot back, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "You think I'm just going to believe that it was a fling and move on? Do you think I'm that stupid?" She flinched at my words, but then something shifted in her expression. Her eyes hardened, and she looked up at me with a defiance I hadn't seen before. "You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I slept with him, but it's not like it was just for the thrill. You think I was just looking for an escape? It wasn't like that." I froze, my mind racing. "What are you talking about?" Kate took a deep breath, wiping away the last of her tears. "Alex, he convinced me to help him with some things at work. We were manipulating client data to get better contracts. He said it was just to get ahead, that it would help us both, and I got caught up in it." My mouth went dry. "You did what?" "It was stupid, I know," she said quickly, her voice desperate now. "But I didn't know how to get out of it. I wanted to end things with him, but I was afraid that if I did, he'd expose everything. I didn't want to lose my job, Andrew. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do." I stared at her, my mind reeling. This was so much worse than I'd thought. Not only had she betrayed me, but she'd put her entire career and our family's future at risk. For what? Some affair with a guy who clearly didn't care about her? "You should have come to me," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "You should have told me what was happening." "I know," she murmured, looking down at her hands. "I know I should have. But I was scared, and everything just spiraled out of control." We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to even process what I'd just heard. This was my wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, and she'd been living a double life right under my nose. Finally, I stood up, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. "I need some time to think," I muttered. "I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I can't deal with this right now." Kate nodded slowly, her eyes pleading. "Please, Andrew, don't give up on us. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I'll quit my job if I have to. Just don't leave me." I didn't respond. I just turned and walked away, my mind numb. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was that my entire world had just been turned upside down, and there was no going back to the way things were before. After that night, things were tense, to say the least. I moved into the guest bedroom and barely spoke to Kate. It felt like I was living with a stranger. She tried talking to me a few times, but I shut her out. I wasn't ready to hear more lies or excuses. I just needed time to think, but time didn't seem to help. Every day, the weight of what I'd learned felt heavier, suffocating me. My mind kept flashing back to those photos, to the conversations we had before I found out, and to all the little details that suddenly made so much more sense in hindsight. There were so many late nights, so many networking events, and urgent projects that she'd said she couldn't miss. I felt like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. How could I have been so blind? Even worse, I had to keep it all together for Sophia's sake. She was too young to understand what was going on, but she could sense the tension in the house. Every time she asked why I wasn't sleeping in the same room as Mommy, I just told her I was snoring too much and didn't want to wake her up. It killed me to lie to my own daughter, but I didn't know how else to explain it without breaking down. Kate kept trying to reach out, apologizing over and over again. She promised she would end things with Alex, that she'd cut him out of her life completely. She even offered to quit her job and find something else. But every time she spoke, it felt like she was just saying what she thought I wanted to hear. The trust between us was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. Then, about a week later, something else happened that pushed me even further toward making a decision. It was a Friday night. I'd just put Sophia to bed, and I was sitting in the kitchen, staring blankly at the wall, when Kate's phone buzzed on the counter. She'd left it there when she went to take a shower. Normally, I wouldn't even think about looking at it. I wasn't the type of husband to snoop, but given everything that had happened, I couldn't help myself. I glanced at the screen and saw a message notification from an unknown number. My heart pounded as I picked up the phone and unlocked it. The message read, "I miss you. I know we agreed not to talk, but I can't stop thinking about you. Can we meet one last time? I need to see you." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Even after everything, after all her promises to cut ties with him, she was still in contact with Alex. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages, looking for more. It turned out there were dozens of them. Conversations about their relationship, how they were going to handle things at work, and even how to keep everything hidden from me. Kate came downstairs a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, her hair wet. She froze when she saw me holding her phone, her face draining of color. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I held up the phone, showing her the message. "You're still talking to him? Even after everything you said? You promised you'd end it, Kate." She looked panicked, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape route. "No, Andrew, it's not like that. I haven't been responding, I swear. He's the one who keeps reaching out. I blocked his number, but he just got a new one." "Stop lying," I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. I felt a rush of anger and betrayal all over again. I saw the messages, Kate. "You've been talking to him for weeks. You've been planning how to keep everything hidden from me. Don't tell me you're not involved with him anymore." She opened her mouth, then closed it, tears welling up in her eyes. "Andrew, please." I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make things worse. Worse? How could it possibly get any worse? I demanded. "You've already destroyed our marriage, put your job on the line, and lied to me over and over again. And now you're telling me that you've been hiding your conversations with him while I'm here, trying to hold everything together for Sophia." Her shoulders slumped, and she covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I know I messed up. I'm just so scared. I didn't want to lose you, but I didn't know how to get out of it. I thought if I just kept things calm, if I didn't make any big moves, we could work through this. But it's all falling apart." I watched her cry, and for a split second, I felt a flicker of pity. But it was drowned out by the overwhelming sense of betrayal and anger. This was my wife, the person I'd trusted more than anyone else in the world, and she'd not only slept with another man, but was still lying to me, still protecting him even after everything had come crashing down. "I can't do this anymore, Kate," I said quietly, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I can't keep being the one to fix this while you keep tearing it apart." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, and reached out like she wanted to hold my hand. "Please, Andrew, don't say that. I love you. I want to make this right." I shook my head, stepping back. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this in the first place. You've lied to me over and over again, even after I confronted you. How am I supposed to believe a single word you say now? Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't leave me. I'll quit my job. I'll never talk to him again. I'll do whatever you want." But I was done listening to empty promises. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my mind made up. I needed to protect myself and my daughter. I couldn't stay in a relationship that was built on lies and deceit. I couldn't trust her anymore, and without trust, what was left? The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. I told him everything about the affair, the photos, the messages. I needed to know what my options were, how I could move forward without losing everything I'd worked so hard to build. "Given the circumstances, I recommend filing for separation first," the lawyer advised. "We'll start gathering evidence, not just of the affair, but also of her involvement with this coworker. If she's compromised her position at work, it could be a major factor in custody and asset division." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was like I'd been drifting in a storm for weeks, and now, finally, I could see the shore. "Okay," I agreed. "Let's do it. I need to protect my daughter." The lawyer explained the next steps, and I felt a small flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maybe, just maybe, I could get through this and come out on the other side stronger. Kate tried to talk to me again that night, but I told her I was done. I needed space, and I needed to think about what was best for Sophia. She begged me not to go through with it, but I didn't have it in me to comfort her anymore, not after everything that had happened. "I don't know what's going to happen," I told her, "but I can't live like this. I need to figure out what's best for me and Sophia. You've made your choice." And with that, I walked away, leaving her sobbing in the kitchen once again. I spent the next few days feeling like I was living in some strange, twisted version of my own life. It was almost surreal how quickly things had spiraled out of control. One minute, I was a husband and father living a normal, if busy, life. The next, I was planning my separation and meeting with lawyers to decide what to do next. Kate kept trying to talk to me, but every time she opened her mouth, it felt like I was just being dragged back into the same pit of lies and betrayal. I didn't know how to respond anymore. Everything she said felt like another excuse, another attempt to manipulate me into letting her off the hook. I stayed civil for Sophia's sake, but inside, I was simmering with anger and frustration. Finally, I decided I needed to take action. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, or that I would magically wake up one day and everything would be back to normal. I needed to take control of the situation and figure out what came next, both for myself and for my daughter. The first step was sitting down with the lawyer to iron out the details of our separation. When I walked into his office, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. I'd never imagined I'd be here, having these kinds of conversations, but I knew it was necessary. The lawyer, Mark, greeted me with a calm, reassuring smile. "Andrew, I know this is difficult," he said gently as we sat down, "but I'm here to help you get through this with as little damage as possible, especially when it comes to your daughter. Let's start with the basics. What are your main priorities going forward?" I didn't hesitate. "Sophia," I said firmly. "I want to make sure she's okay, no matter what happens between Kate and me. I need to make sure this doesn't hurt her more than it already has." Mark nodded. "Of course. I understand. Given the circumstances, Kate's affair, and potential misconduct at work, we have some leverage when it comes to custody arrangements. But I'll be honest, family courts don't always favor fathers, so we need to approach this carefully. Do you have solid evidence of her affair and any potential wrongdoing at her job? I showed him the photos Rick had taken and the text messages I'd saved. Mark took a few minutes to go through everything, his expression serious. "This is good," he finally said. "It shows a pattern of deceit and a lack of consideration for your marriage and your daughter's well-being. The fact that she's still in contact with Alex, even after you confronted her, is significant. It demonstrates that she's not prioritizing her family. But what about the stuff at her work?" I asked, my voice tight. She said she was manipulating data. Couldn't that get her fired? Mark pursed his lips. It could, but we have to tread carefully here. If we use that information, it might damage her career, which could affect the financial aspect of the separation. I suggest we hold on to that for now and only use it if necessary. Our main goal should be to get the best possible arrangement for Sophia and to protect your financial stability. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. Part of me wanted to expose Kate's actions to everyone, to her job, her colleagues, our friends, just to show everyone what she'd done. But I knew that wouldn't help Sophia. If I went scorched earth, it would only create more chaos and hurt for our daughter. I had to be smart about this, even if it meant holding back for now. Okay, I agreed quietly. What do I need to do next? We'll start by filing for a legal separation, Mark explained. This will allow us to set up temporary custody and support arrangements while we work on the divorce. It's less aggressive than jumping straight to a divorce filing, and it gives you some breathing room to figure out how you want to proceed. He handed me a few forms, going over each one carefully. As I signed my name at the bottom, I felt a strange sense of finality wash over me. This was really happening. I was taking the first step toward ending my marriage. It wasn't what I'd wanted, but I knew I didn't have a choice. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and phone calls. Kate kept trying to talk to me, asking if we could go to counseling, if we could try to work things out. Each time, I told her the same thing. I needed space, and I needed to figure things out on my own. I couldn't even look at her without feeling a rush of anger and betrayal. How could she expect me to just forgive and forget? Then, about a week after I filed for separation, I got an unexpected call. "Andrew, it's Rick." The private investigator's voice crackled through the phone. "I know you told me to stop following Kate, but I came across something I thought you'd want to know." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "Well, I was wrapping up some work near her office when I saw Alex. He was talking to some other people, looked like higher-ups from her company. I couldn't get close enough to hear everything, but it looked heated. He was arguing with them, and they didn't look happy." I frowned, trying to process what Rick was telling me. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure," Rick admitted, "but I have a hunch it has something to do with whatever Kate mentioned about manipulating client data. It might be coming back to bite them." A cold chill ran down my spine. If Kate's involvement with Alex was being discovered at work, it could mean serious trouble for her, and by extension, for me and Sophia. I didn't want to see her career destroyed, but I also didn't want her to be able to use it as leverage against me in the separation. "Thanks for letting me know, Rick," I said quietly. "Keep an eye on things, but don't do anything yet. I need to figure out how to handle this." "Will do." "Take care, Andrew," Rick replied before hanging up. I sat there, staring at my phone, my mind racing. If Kate was in trouble at work, it could complicate everything. Part of me wanted to confront her again, demand to know what was going on. But I knew I needed to be careful. This wasn't just about our marriage anymore. This was about protecting my daughter's future. I decided to reach out to Kate's company anonymously. I wanted to know if they were investigating her and Alex, and if so, how serious it was. I didn't want to use that information to hurt her, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. It took a few days to get a response, but when I finally did, it confirmed my worst fears. They were conducting an internal audit and had found discrepancies in some of the accounts that Alex and Kate had been managing together. It was only a matter of time before the full extent of what they'd done came to light. When I confronted Kate with this new information, she looked like she was going to pass out. She started crying, begging me not to report anything to her company. "I'll lose everything, Andrew," she sobbed. "I'll lose my job, my career, please. Don't do this to me." I stared at her, feeling torn. She'd betrayed me, lied to me, and put our family at risk. But did I really want to see her lose everything? Did I want Sophia to grow up knowing that her mother had fallen so far? "I'm not going to report you, Kate," I said slowly, "but you need to deal with this on your own. I'm not going to protect you from the consequences of your own actions." She nodded shakily, wiping her tears. "I'll fix it. I'll tell them the truth. I promise, Andrew. Just don't let this ruin us." I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked away, feeling more conflicted than ever. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. There was no way I could go back to the way things were before. Everything had changed. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster. After our confrontation, Kate tried to keep a low profile at home. I could see the stress wearing her down. She looked tired all the time, like she hadn't slept in days. I didn't know what was going on at her office, and honestly, I didn't want to ask. We were like two strangers coexisting in the same house, exchanging only the bare minimum of words necessary to take care of Sophia and maintain a semblance of normalcy. Then one afternoon, I received a call from Kate's company. It was from someone in the HR department, and they wanted to confirm that I was aware of the ongoing investigation into Kate's activities. I froze, unsure of what to say. They continued, explaining that Kate and Alex had both been suspended pending a final review, and they were considering termination. There was also talk of possible legal action if they couldn't account for the discrepancies in the client data. I felt a mix of pity and anger, but most of all, a sense of inevitability. This was what she'd brought upon herself. That evening, Kate came home looking completely defeated. I could see it in her eyes before she even opened her mouth. She'd been fired. Without a word, she sank onto the couch, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. "They let me go," she whispered, staring blankly at the floor. I tried to explain, but they didn't want to hear it. Alex, he threw me under the bus, said it was all my idea. I shook my head slowly. "What did you expect, Kate? He was never going to protect you. You risked everything for him, and now you're paying the price." She looked up at me, her eyes hollow. I know I deserve this. But, Andrew, I'm scared. I don't know what I'm going to do." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. This was the woman I'd loved for so many years, the mother of my child. Seeing her broken like this, I wanted to reach out to offer some kind of comfort. But then I remembered all the lies, all the betrayal, and I knew I couldn't go back to that place. I couldn't save her from herself. "You'll figure it out," I said softly but firmly. "But I can't help you anymore. I'm focusing on what's best for Sophia. That's all that matters to me now." She nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I get it. I really do. I know I've ruined everything, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But please, Andrew, I want to be part of Sophia's life. I don't want her to lose both of us." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Despite everything, I knew Sophia needed her mother. I couldn't take that away from her, no matter how angry and betrayed I felt. We'd both made our mistakes, and we'd have to live with the consequences, but Sophia didn't deserve to suffer because of it. "I'm not going to keep her from you," I said finally, my voice steady. "But I'm going through with the separation. We'll work out a custody agreement that's fair. but I need you to understand that this marriage is over. There's no coming back from what you did, Kate. I'm sorry, but that's just the reality." She buried her face in her hands and cried quietly, her shoulders shaking with each sob. I stood there, feeling both numb and resolute. It was the end of our story as husband and wife, but it wasn't the end of our lives. We still had to figure out a way to co-parent, to raise our daughter in a way that wouldn't damage her more than this already had. Over the next few weeks, things began to settle into a new kind of routine. Kate moved out and got a small apartment nearby, wanting to stay close for Sophia's sake. We finalized our separation agreement, setting up shared custody and support. It wasn't easy, but we both knew it was the right thing to do. Sophia took it better than I expected, though I could see the confusion and sadness in her eyes when she asked why Mommy wasn't living with us anymore. I kept my answers as gentle and simple as possible, telling her that Mommy and Daddy would always love her, even if we couldn't be together. It broke my heart every time, but I knew I had to be strong for her. One day, about a month after Kate moved out, I got an unexpected text from her. It was short, just a few sentences, but it hit me harder than any argument we'd had. "Andrew, I just wanted to say thank you for not turning me in. I know I don't deserve your kindness after everything I did, but I want you to know I'm truly sorry. I'm trying to find a new job and rebuild my life. I hope one day we can at least be on good terms for Sophia's sake. I wish you happiness, wherever that may be." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the woman I married all those years ago, felt like I needed to acknowledge it somehow. So I took a deep breath and typed out a reply. "I hope you find happiness too, Kate. Take care." And that was it. It wasn't closure, not exactly, but it was enough to finally put the past behind me. In the months that followed, I focused on being the best father I could be for Sophia. I put my energy into my work, spent as much time with her as possible, and slowly started to heal. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when the pain and anger would resurface, but I kept moving forward. Reflecting on everything now, I realized that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. I never thought I'd be in this position, but I've learned a lot from it. I learned to trust my instincts and to value my own happiness and well-being. I learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away, not out of hatred, but because you deserve better. If I had any advice to give to others in similar situations, it would be this: don't ignore the warning signs. Trust yourself, even when it's hard. And most importantly, don't let someone else's betrayal define your worth. You have the strength to move forward, to build a new life, and to find peace again. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm ready to face it one step at a time, for myself and for Sophia.